Former leading nighttime talkback radio host Jim Ball joins us now, the Southern Hemisphere's most politically incorrect commentator. He's a businessman. He's also a gym junkie. You won't find him anywhere except in the gym at about 7 o'clock every morning. Is that right, Jim Ball?
Pretty much. Anytime Fitness Narrabeen. That's my other offers. But you say politically incorrect, but I'm afraid to inform you, Chris, I am becoming more politically correct. Everything I have said in the past, it's like they say, can you invent some more conspiracy theories? Because all the old ones have come true.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Sydney Islamic preacher has called on Muslims to wage jihad and declared Australia hypocrites for labelling as terrorism the Hamas massacre of innocent Israelis on October 7. In a rather radical sermon last week, Brother Ismail, that's all we know him as, delivered a sermon at Al Medina Dawa Centre, southwest of Sydney, that took aim at Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, took aim at our intelligence services and Islamic leaders who had criticised jihad fighters abroad. He said jihad was the solution and that the Hamas terrorists who committed the attacks were not terrorists, but freedom fighters and warriors. Police are investigating. Jim, we're big on free speech here, but I fear what this kind of sermon does is ignite hate and possible violence down the track.
I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that I thought hate speech and incitement to violence was a crime, Chris. But we've got to wonder who we saw all this post 9/11.
Yeah.
Dissolving into the Cronulla riots. I can't remember which one came first. And we had all these firebrands. One was in the news only last week, had his citizenship restored because Dutton stripped it off him. He's in jail. He's coming out.
Ben Bricker.
Ben Bricker, that's the one. But you've got to wonder, who are these people with their toxic message poisoning the minds of their own brethren? Now, rats, and that's what these people are. When I say these people, I'm talking about these radical Islamists as opposed to Muslims. There is a difference. But rats like this, they ought to be stripped of the Australian citizenship, and if he is an Australian citizen, and they're on the next plane back.
Send him off. I'm with you. Deport him straight away.
There's no place for others that share his sentiments in Australia. And the thing is, people mustn't, and I think Alan touched on this as well. It's like getting the band back together, Chris. People mustn't lose focus on how we got here. And this entire thing started on October 7 with Hamas. We know the story, invading Israel on a breezy Saturday afternoon. But now that barbarity has morphed into a global crusade of anti-Semitism. Tens of thousands of useful idiots taking to the streets on the weekend, mindlessly chanting from the river to the sea, which literally means the abolition of Israel. These are the people who probably couldn't find Gaza on a map or wouldn't know which river they were talking about.
Yes.
All right? And so the people, again, need to be reminded of how and why Israel came into being in 1948. Then as now, it was a case of never again. And also worth remembering that the Palestinians were offered their own larger-than-Israel state in the Peel Commission of 1937, again in 1948, but they objected and they ended up with nothing. They've objected and walked away from every deal ever made ever since. So, Chris, in, I think it was 1973, early 70s anyway, Abba Eban, he was the foreign minister or foreign diplomat in the Ministry of Golda Meir. He famously quipped that the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And here we go again. The bottom line is that the Palestinian leadership in its various guises, that is the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, I suppose Hezbollah are a part of Iran, but put them in the mix as well. The last thing they want is a two-state solution. And I'll tell you what, well, they want a final solution. That's what they are talking about. No, make no mistake. They want a final solution. They don't want a state of their own because they'll lose the spotlight. That's one. And they'll have to behave like civilized people and be good, responsible global citizens and not the rogue, corrupt rabble and the gangster outfit of pirates, brigands and bandits they are now. And I think that probably is the best way to describe them. A rogue, corrupt, violent rabble, gangster outfit of pirates, brigands, and bandits. And just on the broader point, Chris, of irrational Jew hatred, something I read the other, I can't remember I read it or I heard it, but anyway, it goes like this. To the right, Jews are the far left. To the left, Jews are the far right. The black supremacists see Jews as the problem. The white supremacists see Jews as the problem. The communists blame the Jews for capitalism. The capitalists blame the Jews for communism. Blame is on the Jews for everything from the Great Depression to the Black Plague. But the one thing the extremists from all angles, left, right, black, white, communist, capitalist, the one thing they agree on is that the Jews are the source of the world's problems. All, count them, 13 to 16 million of them. That's all in the entire world compared to, I think, 1.5 billion Muslims. There's only, people think, I said to somebody, how many Jews do you think there are in the world? Oh, like hundreds of millions. I said, no, less than the population of Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's, I can't believe that. And I just saw before we came on air, Chris, in the Daily Mail, Melbourne is home to Nazis and far-left activists, leaving Jews facing a tsunami of hatred like they've never before experienced in Australia. And so in my lifetime, we all thought this was done and dusted, and this was, all of that was in the past.
The League of Nations was set up never to repeat what occurred at the Holocaust.
Yeah, and the United Nations on that one, and the United Nations replaced the League of Nations.
Yeah,
but the thing is that I think Australia, and I know the US under Trump and would, they're suggesting that they withdraw funding and withdraw themselves from the United Nations, and I think that'd be a step in the right. Look at all these humanitarian bodies of the United. They're all headed up by the worst, the worst of the worst. Mm. There was one the other day, some human rights body headed up by Iran, for God's sake. Explain that.
Yeah, exactly. Alan mentioned it in the interview that we had with him. He quoted what was written in The Australian over the weekend by columnist Gemma Tognini. She wrote over the weekend, and I have said this on a previous occasion, a family of 4, 2 young children, a boy and a girl, 6 and 8 years of age. This was captured on GoPro footage on the bodies of the terrorists.
Yeah.
They sat at their breakfast table and were made to watch as their father had his eyes gouged out in front of them. Then someone cut off their mother's breast. The same savages turned then to the little girl, the 8-year-old, and cut off her foot before turning to her little brother. Just 6 years of age, they sliced the fingers from their hands. Only then was this family killed. After their execution, the Hamas terrorists sat down and help themselves to a meal. Does that alone not give Israel the right to
Absolutely.
keep hunting down every single one of these despicable terrorists?
For the pigs and dogs that they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, this is straight from Dante's 7 Circles of Hell, Chris. And we had this preacher in Western Sydney with a hellfire and brimstone speech, raising hell on the weekend, or was it last week, because civilized people called them terrorists and not freedom fighters. Hello? Are these people freedom fighters? We could spend an entire program on this topic alone and just trying to get your head around and find the words to describe the barbaric mindset at work with these people. It's challenging. Now, I've got a pretty good vocabulary, but some things just suck the oxygen out of the room. Yeah. You can cite comparisons with the Manson family or Hannibal Lecter or the Nazis, but even this falls short of the bloodlusting satanic depravity that what went on with this particular family. And we have this preacher talking about these terrorists, these pus-engorged, maggot-infested bedsores as freedom fighters. Mm. And we put up with people like this who want to lecture us on hypocrisy, standards, decency. I think morality crept into his speech as well. So make no mistake, these people and their twisted, contorted, demonic thinking must be eradicated. There aren't even that demonic, twisted, contorted. Even that doesn't get to the guts of this. They've got to be eradicated from the face of the earth. Let's assume very quickly that can be achieved. What about the civilian youth who've been infused with this parasitic toxic mind virus? What about them? They'll still be there. Up until now, we've believed the Nazis were the worst, but no, afraid not. These people top that as well. And one more thing on this, to Gemma Tonyi's broader point. By the way, I've put her piece up on my website, jimball.com.au, for those who haven't read it. The West does have, and this was the basic thrust of her article, the West does have a crisis of courage and leadership, even in the face of what we read and what we've seen and heard about those events of October 7. The leadership of the West, even before Israel responded, was talking in terms of proportionality and humanitarian pause. This is all about slow walking and buying time to give Hamas some breathing room. In its own way, and that UN vote last week also was anti-Semitism. In its own way, it's all anti-Semitism, dressed up to look respectable, about caring and sharing and humane. Lucky these scumbags aren't general in the field. And it's also because many of these cowardly, craven and pusillanimous politicians, people like Tony Burke, they've got these large Muslim constituencies they rely on. So they're walking on eggshells, talking out both sides of their mouth. And they're fooling no one. But Gemma, to the broader point, Gemma Tonghini doesn't miss. As for the global jihad, marches and anti-Semitism, she's right on point. Right on point.
Spot on. Yep. I want to take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk further about this Australian-Chinese get-together powwow today in Beijing. And I also want to talk about the kids at a public school in Sydney that were asked to vote on The Voice. Boy, oh boy, talk about the manipulation of children for their own political means. We'll take a break. Jim Ball shortly on TNT Radio.
With his expert analysis and opinion, this is TNT Radio's Timothy Shea.
Kids say the darndest things and do them. One handful of young scamps dressed up as Joe Biden and his Secret Service detail for Halloween this week, and their antics have taken the internet by storm. Stumbling around, falling to the ground, going up to women and sniffing them. Our young protagonist was constantly guided which way to go, helped back to his feet, and pulled off unsuspecting females, as true Secret Service agents are tasked every single day. They say that politics is downstream of culture, and if you've lost the kids, you've pretty much lost your mojo, Joe. Meanwhile, at rallies across the country, crowds are packing in shoulder to shoulder for Donald Trump, including at the University of Mississippi, where platinum rapper Lil Pump led the crowd in a "We Want Trump" chant. Democrats know they've lost the youth vote, and they know that their prospects for 2024 aren't too good, which is why they're mannequin in a panic to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. From MAGAInstitute.com, this is Timothy Shea for TNT Radio.
Asthma is a growing problem, especially among children. Asthma affects the quality of life for millions like me every single day. My name is Chris Draft, and I have asthma. And I've spent more than a decade in the NFL tackling asthma on and off the field. Join me in the EPA in helping people control their asthma. Asthma is a lung condition that can be controlled through medication and by avoiding things that can make it worse. 3 steps are the solution to controlling asthma. Step 1, talk to a doctor. Step 2, make a plan. And step 3, get rid of things that can make it worse. Asthma can be tackled. For more information on asthma, log on to epa.gov/asthma.
This is the Chris Smith Show on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Former nighttime radio king Jim Ball is my guest right now. Anthony Albanese is in Beijing holding talks with the Chinese leadership today, Jim. Now, John Lee, in an opinion piece in The Australian today, wrote, there is a dangerous element of naive and fuzzy thinking surrounding the Prime Minister's trip to China. The idea of stability with China can only ever be regarded as a fraud or at least a furphy when the fundamental approach of Beijing is inherently destabilizing. This is because it is based on strategic surprise, escalation, and using coercion or inducements to challenge, change, or upend relationships, institutions, and norms to advance Chinese interests. Tread with extreme caution, Jim. That's probably the best advice Anthony Albanese could get, isn't it?
Well, the other alternative, we could have an elbow in a China shop. Boom, boom. I've been working on that one all day.
That's very good.
Look, you can only have one prime minister at a time, but with regards to dealing with the rogue state and that's what it is, rogue state, and the CCP particularly, nothing against the Chinese people, but the CCP, it's difficult to take Albo seriously. Hawke, Howard, Keating, Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison, Rudd, definitely, even Gillard maybe, they brought a certain dignity, poise, I don't know, sobriety or gravitas to the office. But this bloke, and thinking about this earlier today, he reminds me, with Albo on the world stage, Washington last week, this week Beijing, reminds me of Dad and Dave at the Royal Easter Show circa 1930. G'day, Dave, what's going on? What's this thing? But as an aside, just look at his polling today too. He's too smart by half. By wedding himself to The Voice, he managed to whittle and fritter away the goodwill, the capital, and basically blow up his prime ministership. Certainly the honeymoon. 18 months to go. It's anyone's guess what's going to happen. A lot of things in this current climate, a lot of things can happen. Unfortunately, Australia, like America and the rest of the West, they've created this insurmountable problem for themselves vis-a-vis supply chains. China, with its 1.5, I think it is, billion population market, can just turn off the spigot and play hardball whenever they're of a mind to do so. Now, think about this number and how dramatic this really is. This was in yesterday's Sunday Telegraph. In 2017, there were just 5,000 Chinese manufactured cars sold in Australia. 6 years later, 2023, as of last September, 2 months ago, that number, 145,000. That's from 5,000 to 145,000, and that is up on 75% on last year. And if it's not China, I guess, with cars, it'll be Japan anyway. And then there's the electric cars. China has cornered the market on that and leads the market in battery technology. And, of course, all the associated manufacturing upstream and downstream powered, all in Australia, all of that's gone as well, all those ancillary industries. And, of course, in China, it's all powered by Australian coal. They're not concerned in the slightest about emissions or net zero. So apart from the car industry, there's hundreds of other industries, not so high-profile industries, that we don't think about that have gone the way of the dodo. They can't compete because since the early 2000s, China has been abusing the World Trade Organization. And put all of that aside, culturally and economically, China's invaded and influenced Western institutions most people aren't even aware of. And I thoroughly recommend it. I remembered I mentioned it some weeks ago, that people download from Amazon, the Clive Hamilton book, Silent Invasion. Hamilton is or was, I think, a professor of public ethics at Charles Sturt. I think he's still there. I'm not sure. And he lays it all out, explains chapter and verse what's gone on for the last 20 years or so. The Chinese, or rather the CCP influence in Australia, is everywhere, hiding in plain sight. And I was just vis-a-vis, darting back to the Jewish thing and the Israeli thing and the Hamas thing. Back in 1938, the Nazis developed this image of Jews as a giant octopus with its tentacles encircling the globe. If you just Google Jews, octopus, encircling globe, you'll get it. Well, it never was the Jews, but it most definitely is China and the CCP in 2023. They are the octopus with the tentacles encircling and touching on everything, everywhere, and they're tightening their grip.
Yep. Can I go back to Israel and Hamas? Now, Alina is obviously pro-Palestinian, which is terrific that she supports those people. Let's hope that she divides Hamas from the Palestinian people, as the Palestinian people should be doing right now. It's their opportunity to seize the day and divorce themselves from Hamas, but it doesn't look like as if it's happening. Certainly I'm not hearing at any of the pro-Palestinian rallies, Alina. But Alina says, what a disgusting rhetoric from your guest about genocide happening in front of our eyes. And you're supporting the very thing you have endured as Jewish people. What a shame. And it's a problem created by Israel in the first place by creating Hamas. They did contribute to Hamas being in opposition to the PLO. How is Israel going to be punished for that? Oh, I forgot. They are untouchables. That's Alina's view of the world.
Well, how are they to know?
Yeah.
How was Israel to know what they were dealing with until the people voted? It's that
Correct.
old line that the people in Palestine got one. They believe in democracy. One man, one vote. One man, one vote. Once.
Yeah.
And that's yeah.
Yeah. Chris has clashed with Alina here on the chat box, and Chris has said, Islamists caused this. Why are you such a Jew hater? Muslims are taking over in every Western country. I don't think it's Muslims taking over. It's extremist Islamic extremism, I'll put it and spit it out properly, that we should be focusing on and outing at every turn. Chris, thank you very much for that. One final
Aided
thing.
and abetted. Sorry, Chris, go on.
Go on.
Aided and abetted by the political class in the West with their unbridled multiculturalism and not taking any notice of people. These like that preacher. How did he get here?
Yeah.
Why is he here?
How did he get under the veil? Exactly. Hey, 10-year-old kids at the trendy Inner West Birchgrove Public School in Sydney have been asked to vote on The Voice. Yes campaign teachers thought they could handle the complexity of Indigenous politics and funding and history. How dare they?
Well, look, it reminds me of that old maxim. Some say it was Aristotle, some say it was the Jesuits. Give him the child until he is 7 and I'll give you the man. And that's what's going on with this indoctrination, subtle or overt, at primary school, right through high school, right through university. But 2 points on this, Chris. First of all, what are activists from either side in such a contentious debate doing in the classroom other than giving a one-sided view of history? Now, they'll say, as the article did, they put the cases for yes and no. But does anybody seriously believe that the no case received equal emphasis and certain aspects weren't highlighted or downplayed and spun, underscored and so on? And the other point worth making is that with a captured audience of 10-year-olds, there was a classic case of push polling. That is, for people who don't understand that in polling lingo, that is framing the questions in such a way that you elicit a particular kind of response. That's push polling. You're pushing the person to come to a particular conclusion. And apparently, the kids were encouraged, I'd suggest intimidated, to wear yes badges at school. So what are the kids at Birchgrove Public School supposed to do if they don't want to be on the outer? It reminded me when I read that, did you ever see the Seinfeld episode about wearing the red ribbon for AIDS awareness in the march where Kramer?
Oh, yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
He refused to wear the ribbon because he wasn't into virtue signaling or whatever reason. And he was totally reamed and totally berated by the ribbon Nazis. But that's what it reminded me of. It was the ribbon Nazis all over again. The question remains, though, Chris, who was behind this and what were their motives? And I think we know what their motive is. It's all about indoctrination. I'll say it again. Give him the child until he is 7 and I'll give you the man.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, Jim Ball. Great to have you on the program, mate. Thank you for the added extra and
Thanks,
added
Chris.
time. Good on you.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
Jim Ball on the program today. Once again, some comments, as you heard, in support of what he said, and some comments not necessarily agreeing with him. That's exactly the way we like it. That's exactly the way we like it. Bring it on. What have I got? I've only got a minute left. I do want to say that J.K. Rowling has got stuck into the South Australian government. She's lashed out at a new gender rule that we spoke about on the program on Thursday, set to govern one state's court system, saying that they could re-traumatise women who are the victims of male violence. The outspoken Harry Potter author took to X this week to slam a ruling from South Australian Chief Justice that states the use of preferred gender pronouns is a matter of respect and will be used in the court from here on in. Dear oh dear, as woke as it gets. And J.K. Rowling is exactly correct. I'll leave you with our good friend Lembic Opic for the several hours ahead, and I look forward to your company at the same time tomorrow. This is Chris Smith on TNT Radio. I've got the former nighttime king of Australian talkback radio, our politically incorrect commentator, the one and only Jim Ball, with us right now. Jim, welcome back to TNT Radio.
Hi, Chris. You can hear me all right, I hope. We had a bit of technical difficulties there.
No, I can hear you quite fine, mate.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Just with the Zoom thing. There's so much, man. It's a real feast. It's a real meat and potatoes period that we're living through at the moment. And it's difficult to know where to begin. So what do you reckon? Where do we start?
Well, can I take you to... I want to go to Victoria.
Teachers?
The Victorian government has rebuked Melbourne teachers taking action in solidarity with Palestine after the opposition accused Premier Jacinta Allen of going soft on striking students. The unions love using schools to ram home political policies, don't they?
All the time. If it's not nuclear or Trump. This is a new one. This is the latest topic du jour. The rampant, unapologetic anti-Semitism. Basically, what it is, what we're seeing right now, right around the world, is a normalization of anti-Semitism. That's what the Hamas sock puppets here in Australia and elsewhere, that's what they're trying to do. And people who would have kept their head down, they've just unashamedly unleashed this anti-Semitism since October 7. What the coronavirus was to 2024, that's what it is. It is a virus. That's what the coronavirus of 2020, of 2020, is the anti-Semitism virus of 2023-24. And it's a virus as we're seeing, every bit as and just as deadly to the community. It's a mind virus, to be sure. It's a virus of the mind. And up until recent years, there was a certain area of life or areas of life that you just, didn't venture into. And anti-Semitism was one of them. But I think it speaks volumes about how the guardrails and what constitutes acceptable behaviour and acceptable beliefs have been gradually whittled away, and now there are no standards. Everything's been totally demolished, and people just come out and say what they like. They're totally devoid of any filters. And what was once verboten is now, in some circles at least, acceptable. I mean, like I said, some people have no filters at all, no shame, and aren't the slightest bit embarrassed by ignorance and their uninformed views. And I don't know, I think it's just starting to dawn on the average Australian that all the institutional organs of influence, like the mainstream media and the education profession in this case, and many of those in the teaching profession have been successfully recruited, infiltrated by the hard left. And this is not new. They've been at it for decades. I mean, the ABC, that's been undermined since, I think it was 1964. And I've got the guy's name somewhere in my files who started all of that. Alan Ashbolt, I think it might have been.
Look what teachers have done in terms of climate change. A one-sided view of the most important energy-based issue that those children will face.
That's right. And look, I've lost my train of thought. I think people find it infuriating, whether it's the ABC journalist or teachers, both funded by taxpayers. And what they find infuriating is that government, particularly the Liberal Party, who you'd expect to do something, state and federal, do absolutely nothing. They talk up a big game, but they do nothing when they've got the opportunity. So in that sense, it's good to see the Labor Party Premier in Victoria coming out and condemning that action as quote-unquote inflammatory and divisive, and that it will only sow seeds of disharmony. But and here's the question, what does such condemnation, what does it mean? What does it look like? We often hear about people being censured, and I'm thinking, well, okay, what does that mean? Does it mean detention for 10 minutes at lunchtime? What the hell does it mean? I don't think it means anything, to be honest, whether it's censure or whether it's condemnation. Words have got to be backed up with action. And if the politicians want to be taken seriously, you know what they want to do? I've seen about this, I believe it or not, a bit of domestic stuff here. I've just been down to Bunnings in the last hour to get some screws. And I'm just thinking, the penalty for this sort of thing, both for the teachers and with parental permission, the students, should be to force them to sit through that 45-minute body cam video shot by Hamas.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've probably heard about it. We've all seen the odd 60 seconds, 2-minute babs here and there. That's bad enough. But this 45-minute thing is the full Monty.
Yep.
And if teachers still hold their views at the end of viewing that, they still hold to their views, they should be dismissed, just as you would dismiss a pedophile. Keep them away from kids because they're a bad influence. This issue, this topic, if you like, is no area for the casual, drive-by opinion. And, well, it seems to me that the entire Israeli-Palestinian matter has devoted to, or devolved rather, into one of those theoretical, red team, blue team, your team, my team things. Like, it's very well to kick this stuff around in the professorial lounge at the universities and the faculty lounge and the lunchrooms at school, but we're talking serious stuff here, and the harmony of the society. And the thing is, it's anywhere and everywhere there's a captive audience. Get on a Qantas plane, you get the Welcome to Country. The Sydney Theatre Company the other night, they got the Welcome to Country at the beginning, political statement, bookended by this demo at the encore, the official encore of the opening night, this demo for the Palestinian cause. So the event was bookended both sides by political statements. And of course, the irony being, and as somebody pointed out in a letter in the Australian today, that audience on Monday night, and even passengers on a plane, they get no warning, or planes you do now because you know, but those people the other night, they had no warning, they had no choice. Like the captured Jews from Israel, that audience were hostages to the message. They just think about that. The production was bookended by Welcome to Country at one end, and the back end, the Palestinian demo. And that's where we're at. These people, they'll step up there on the stage or wherever in the classroom, and they've got they've totally no filters, no brakes, no guardrails.
As I mentioned, Jim, climate change is another one that teachers should hang their head in shame about when it comes to instruction to children. But Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen is facing a bit of a nuclear ambush when he turns up to COP28 in Dubai next week, because Labor has this renewables-only vision, which, as one commentator mentioned today, is isolating Australia as an international outlier, because you've got senior people associated with COP28 who are saying uranium, or should I say nuclear, is the baseload power answer for the future. Well, we don't want to venture into the nuclear sphere. We look like a primitive juvenile backwater in the Pacific Ocean somewhere.
And Labor wonders why their polling is where it is. Look, Chris Bowen reminds me of one of those Pauline road to Damascus religious converts, and they take up the new cause with the zealotry of a Bible-thumping missionary out to change the world one heathen at a time. Nuclear is to Bowen what was his name? Lex Luthor is to Superman. Or nuclear is his kryptonite, if you like.
Kryptonite.
But it seems that he's about to get, as you said, mugged by reality, that there's no way Labor can possibly reach their net zero targets or its goal. I think it's 82% of renewables by 2030. 2030 is, 7 years away. 6 years away almost, right? And they can't do that and keep the lights on without baseload of some kind. And if they're serious, that means nuclear. Again, the rabid convert, he's become irrational and totally deluded. Climate does that to people. Just as Albo saw, I was thinking about this, Albo saw The Voice as his signature program. That would etch his name indelibly in history.
His legacy.
His legacy. Bowen believes the same. This is his come to Jesus moment. And he thinks that his come to Jesus moment lies in the chimera and the unicorns of renewable energy. It's his very own fantasy project. and saner, wiser minds need to talk him off the ledge, to be honest. And now we learn that he's facing this, I don't know, ambush or whatever you want to call it, in Dubai next week I think it runs for 12 days to the 12th of December. And it's finally dawned on Australia's allies that nuclear is the only sensible path forward, as you pointed out. And of course, we all say, well, yeah, what took you so long? And Bowen has argued, his argument has always been, it'd be too expensive, it'd take too long, that we'd be starting from scratch. Well, funny how that fallacious argument about starting from scratch applies to nuclear, but not to wind and solar. Both
Correct.
Started from scratch, and only in recent years at that. But Chris, I just want to make this one point, a further point, and a broader point on energy generally. We need to be constantly reminded that Western civilization and our society and the opportunity that it's afforded us over the last, 150 odd years has built on the back of cheap, abundant and reliable energy. And what the climate cult wants to impose on us is that they want, by design, for your energy to be less reliable, less abundant and more expensive. And apart from flying in the face of reason and logic, just think about how anti-human and how twisted that is and what it says. It says the dollars in your pocket that you were planning on your health, your housing, your retirement, your education, upgrading your personal life, maybe a baby, a new car, renovations, whatever, the government's going to deprive you of that money and those benefits and upgrades to your quality of life to deliberately degrade your quality of life. And have you pay more for something that is not reliable, not available when you need it.
Australians should be infuriated at the direction they are taking this country in this issue.
Yep. When you strip it all back, that is what they're promising. Energy that's not reliable or available when you need it. It's not abundant and it's not cheap. And just one more thing while I'm on a roll here. One of the nuclear arguments, to wrap it up in some context, one of the nuclear arguments is safety. Nuclear is unsafe. Well, worldwide, 1.4 million people die annually in car accidents, 2.3 million in work-related accidents, and 4.2 million from air pollution. Deaths directly related to nuclear power, less than 200, not annually, but in the entire history of the nuclear power industry.
Great stats.
That includes the 3 Mile Island incident in 1979. It includes Chernobyl in 86. After 3 Mile Island, they said the radiation was equivalent to that of a chest X-ray, right? And Fukushima in 2011. Fukushima was, they built the power station in a country close to the water that was subject to earthquakes and therefore tsunamis. And that was why that happened. But there you go, Chris. I'm sorry. I get wound up with this stuff.
Great statistics. And this is the reason why the likes of Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese should put their big boy pants on and make proper decisions about the future of baseload power in this country. I've got to go to a break, Jim. Stay right where you are. There's still a couple of subjects I want to hit you with, and I'm sure you've got plenty to say about those clowns who turned up on ABC last night. We'll get to Jim Ball in just a second on TNT Radio. Let's get back to Jim Ball, and there's still plenty to discuss. As he said at the beginning of our segment today, it's what not to touch because there's plenty around. Like most of the country, I don't watch Q&A on Australia's ABC, Jim, but I saw what two panellists said about the voice referendum result on the Daily Mail website today when I was scanning that source of news. And I thought, hold on a second. These two need consecutive uppercuts. But one of them is a dating show host by the name of Osher Gunsberg, who I've seen around about the place. The other is an Indigenous LGBTQI Victorian government representative, Tony Fernando. And this is what they said about the no vote winning. Have a listen.
I don't care how you voted. I have no quarrel with you. But if you're not terrified of how quickly we were manipulated as a country, if you don't want to start asking questions about who flooded the zone, we need, we're really lucky. We're really lucky that it wasn't during a Tarqui election.
4 out of 10 people are educated on this issue. That's how I see it. So if 60% voted no, we've got 4 out of 10 who are there. Fact check it if you want.
So, Jim, let's sum up. Gutenberg said there was some kind of conspiracy to contaminate the yes vote, and Fernando thinks us no voters are just plain dumb. I'll leave it to you.
Yes, well, Ginsburg, who is Osher Ginsburg, that was my first thought as well, but we've been manipulated, okay? The other guy basically, talk about elitism, narcissistic snob, that the 40% were right, even though they were wrong. But look, here we go. To my untrained eye, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a psychologist. That may surprise you, Chris. But what we're dealing with here are the screams into the void and the visceral pain of a couple of losers going through the framework of the 5 stages of grief. Unfortunately, 2.5 months on, and they're still only at stage 1, which is denial. That's where they're
Yes.
at. They still have anger and bargaining and depression and acceptance to work through until they learn to live with their grief and their loss. So if you beat the left, this is how it works. If you beat the left, right, you must have manipulated the masses somehow. But if they were to win, well, it's all above board, it's legit and not to be questioned. You see that in the American elections. Trump wins, they stole the election, Trump manipulated, he was a Russian asset, whatever, you know. So now you proffer a view that runs counter to the approved narrative, then there must be a conspiracy of disinformation and misinformation. Your argument is no longer legitimate, and neither is your win. That's the way they think. They've just got this narcissistic view of the world that they're right and that's it. Yep. Unfortunately, with all these proposed laws that are swirling around about mis and disinformation, we're going to see a lot more of this kind of thing, I fear. This is how certain and how, again, I'll use the word narcissistic, these people are. In their mind, it's just not possible to have a better argument. It's quite an infantile, sick and twisted worldview. And so with of that in mind, just sniffing the electoral and referendum breeze, they had to get out in front with their excuse to explain away their looming loss. And I recall back in, I think it was middle of September, literally a month before the Fin Review, they had a piece on this and how people that was being manipulated and propaganda and all the rest of it. So think about that. We were doing the manipulation and the propaganda, and we've covered this before. Despite them having the money, the media, the celebrities, and of course the government of the day, somehow the rascally rabbit, the no-vote roadrunner, poisoned the well and dropped an anvil on the yes vote.
How dare he say that when you rightly point out that everything was going on their side? The money, the donors, corporate Australia, sporting Australia, you name it. They had everything on their side, and they couldn't convince Australians because Australians are smart. They're not dumb.
The one thing they didn't have on their side, Chris, was logic, reason, and truth. Simple as that.
Yeah. I want to raise one last point with you. A parliamentary committee examining the 2022 federal election has called for the number of senators to increase from 2 to 4 for both territories. The final report also called for a fresh look, hang on to this, into whether the House of Representatives should be expanded to include more MPs due to Australia being underrepresented compared to similar democracies. I think this is almost a rhetoric question for you, Jim. Do we need more politicians?
Oh, definitely. Look, Chris, most people's eyes will glaze over, but I think this has the potential to be the biggest story development in a long time in Australian politics. After all, nothing quite says efficiency in delivering to the Australian people than a bloated parliament of mediocrity, mates, and time-serving hacks.
Yep.
I think the idea of increasing the number of MPs, I think that's a head fake, right? I think the real objective is to increase the size of the Senate, the Labor Green left. That's what they want. And of course, and give them a permanent lock on the Senate. And as I pointed out in the Oz today, somebody pointed out the recommendations follow an amendment to Labor's national platform in August, moved by the CFMEU and the Northern Territory Attorney General Chauncey Punch, while the CFMEU National Secretary Zach Smith said Labor needed to implement the recommendations in full. So you can see where it's coming from and headed to. The thing is that Canberra is nothing less, think about it, drive through the place, it's nothing less than a wannabe Washington, D.C., and exists for no other reason. Every other town has a base of sorts. It could be rural, it could be the big end of town, but Canberra exists for politics only. And just like Washington, D.C., being a town of public servants and bureaucrats, it votes left. It's ground zero. In 2022, the vote was 70+% for Labor and the Green left in Canberra. And right now, there's a similar plot in the US to make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico states as well, which would guarantee the Democrats 4 extra senators and a permanent lock-on senatorial control. This is no different. The thing is, as I understand from a brief read of Section 7, Part 2, the things I do in my spare time, I thought this would be a referendum thing, but apparently not. I'll just read 2-3 lines. The Parliament may make laws increasing or diminishing the number of senators for each state, but so that equal representation of the several original states shall be maintained, and that no original state shall have less than, in this case, 6 senators, it said at the time of the Constitution. So the Parliament can do it without anybody having a say in it. And you know something, the proposal reminds me very much of the continuing campaign by teachers for more teachers and more money and smaller class sizes. But in the end, the result is lower quality and an inferior product. I think David Littleproud made the point today. What we need is better politicians, not more politicians.
Yes.
The basic question, Chris, is apart from votes on the floor of the House and the Senate, what would another 24 or 25 members of the House or 4 to 6 senators, what would that add to the sum total of political debate? What would it add?
0.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've got to leave it there. Run out of time. The music started in my ear. Thank you so much for your time, Jim Ball. We'll catch you in a couple of weeks if I can.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks, Chris.
All right, mate. Thank you very much for that. The politically incorrect former nighttime talkback radio champion, Jim Ball, saying it like it is. I love when he nuts these things down, and how good with the stats about what nuclear power has taken away in terms of lives when we lose lives in so many other ways. Get your big boy pants on, Bowen and Albanese, and think about a nuclear future. I've got to leave it there. I will leave you in the capable hands of Lembit Opik, and we'll do it again tomorrow at the same time. This is Chris Smith on TNT Radio.